again for accepting this invitation to be a guest on our show.
Oh, indeed, it's a great honor for me to be here with you, my fellow brother in the ministry class.
Praises due to Allah. I'd like to jump straight into the interview. So my first question is, let's pick up from where we began with this program. We opened up with a clip of you at the Mosque Mariam, delivering, speaking on that Sunday at during a part of the national broadcast. So, you know, just how did it feel to be given that opportunity to give the main message on that Sunday?
Yes, sir. Well, I think for those of us who are in this ministry, it's a tremendous honor to be allowed the opportunity to speak from that mosque that is, the mosque that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had our nation to repurchase after it was lost prior to 75. And, the history of that mosque and that stage being not just a national stage, but really an international stage that is viewed all over the world. When I first received that invitation to speak there, of course, I was deeply humbled and grateful. And of course, there's some thoughts of some nerves might come up. But I can say that, when I was blessed to speak with the minister a couple of weeks before going up to deliver that message, he told me, he said, "I'll be listening." And he said, I'll be watching. And he said he watches every Sunday. And he said, and he rejoins every Sunday. And, for a student to know his teacher is going to be viewing, of course, there's maybe some nerves about everybody else, but to know that your teacher's watching, really, you want to do your best. So, having the chance to actually be there on that stage, I said, once I got the invitation, I said, well, I don't believe Allah would permit me to go up on that stage and not back me up and help me out. So I was approaching it, with the confidence that I get up there, he's going to be with me. He's going to comfort me. He's going to make this an enjoyable process. And I didn't want to allow nerves or anything to take away that precious moment from me. So, in truth, I enjoyed every minute of it, every minute of the preparation of going up and delivering the message. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. That I think, it's just a testimony that Allah, like the minister said, Allah will never ask you to do something and then not give you the help that you need to do it. So, he
Mm.
really helped me with his spirit. He really comforted me. I can't say I was totally without nerves, but I was not nearly as nervous as I thought I would be. Knowing that level of stage and the magnitude of speaking from that sacred rostrum. But I approached it saying, of course, I'm gonna do my best, but this is something that we as student ministers do almost every Sunday, delivering the word. So I said, we're gonna deliver the word in the name of Allah, and He'll grant us success. And I believe that day He did grant us success and a victory. Had a good number of brothers and sisters stand up to accept that day. So I mean, it was a wonderful honor, and I was definitely happy to be there. And I think that all those who were there, from the feedback that I got, that they enjoyed it very much as well.
Praise be to Allah. And I'm so happy, man. I love the mindset that and how you approached it, that Allah would not permit this to happen and then for me to be unsuccessful. Like He says in the Holy Quran, we did not reveal this Quran to you that you may be unsuccessful. Right. So that's
Mm.
and brother, because sometimes as believers, some people may feel bad about thinking that, but that should be the mindset of a believer, because all of us, what we do, we're here to glorify Almighty God Allah, right? So that's
That's
good.
right.
And so you mentioned about the minister speaking to the minister prior to doing it. He said he was going to tune in. Did you hear from him after you gave the lecture? And if so, is there anything you can share?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He called after the message was over, almost immediately after getting off the rostrum. I got a call, and when he picked up the phone, he said, "Ooh," He said, "You taught that, brother." And he was just saying he thought I really did a great job, and yeah, he was grateful for the way that I delivered the word. And of course, I said to him, I said, "I appreciate you, dear minister, because I wouldn't have anything to say or know what to do if it was not for his teaching and his guidance." And he just responded saying, he said, "Yes, I know you do. I can tell by the way that you preach." So, that
Mm.
was really made me happy to know my teachers pleased, and that he could hear my appreciation for him in the way that I lifted up our teacher. And I think that all of his words, just express gratitude, that he was proud, so that for me was the victory. Of course, you want everybody else to be pleased, but to hear your teacher come on and say, "Oh," it was that was the highlight of all the feedback that I was blessed to receive.
Yo, man. Yeah, that's the lessons. Problem 13. Say that is the greatest desire of your teacher and your brothers, right? They want to see us
Hmm.
sit ourselves in heaven at once. And when I read that, to me, that's saying that Master Farah Muhammad, the Mozambique Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, they want to be able to sit back and say, look at our students,
Mm.
so that's a beautiful thing, man. And this next question, for many of our guests that come on and they share their story, for many of them, we hear their story about their journey to Islam. It began with themselves, like they weren't in a nation, they weren't born in a nation. However, you were born to Muslim parents, and as I watched one of your interviews, but you did not really really like get into accepting it until like later in your later years, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
talk about that journey, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. The journey that I've been blessed to be on has been very, to me, very interesting. As I grew up in a household with parents who had accepted Islam before I was born, so my name has not been changed. This has always been my name, and I grew up in a house where, of course, we had pictures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We had the books around. But it was a time in my early years that my family, for that moment in time, had not been involved actively in the mosque. So I didn't grow up necessarily learning the teachings. I did not necessarily grow up attending mosque or study group, but I knew I was a Muslim from what I was told. I couldn't necessarily explain to you what all that meant as a younger man, as a boy, but I ended up going to attend Catholic school as a high school as a basketball player. I went to Catholic school. I learned the teachings of the Catholic Church, and of course, around that time, my family began returning to the mosque. But it was not something that I necessarily was pursuing as most young boys, not necessarily looking for religion or righteousness, but looking to pursue their goals. And I was trying to, go to the NBA. I was trying to do what young men do. But I always did believe that it was the truth. And I did have in my heart, I knew there was something special about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, even without being necessarily thoroughly taught about who he is. But as I went from high school and learning what I learned in Catholic school of the way they made us learn about Old Testament and New Testament, it prepared me to have a scriptural background on which once I did start listening to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I was able to tally up what he was saying with a scriptural base that I had gained in Catholic school. So I always will be grateful for that. But even with that, it was not until I went to live in Chicago as I was going to college down there playing basketball, and some of the difficulties that I endured down in living in Chicago. It was those growing pains that I think made the voice of the minister to become clearer and clearer in my mind. And some of the difficulties that I went through on that road it has a way of humbling you. It has a way of making you to seek guidance. And so the more things got difficult, the more I began to yearn for guidance. Of course, not having my father around at that time in my life, it was the minister's voice that always gave me that comfort of a father. And so I had to listen to him more the more I went through. And, I can really say Allah was putting me through a lot at that time while I was living in Chicago. But ultimately it was bringing me closer. So I started reading Message to the Black Man. I started getting all of the tapes that my mother and father had from years prior, and just, listening to tape after tape, getting the books that I had been passing by all those years. They had been on the shelf, but I wasn't paying them any attention because I wasn't looking for it. But once my eyes started to open to see that, we have guidance through all of this, I was able to begin pulling on that. And before I knew it, I couldn't resist. I had to find my way to the path myself, as opposed to just saying that's something my parents did.
Beautiful. All of us have our journeys. And in every journey there's a testimony that we can give that helps others. And and since we're talking about that, there are many other parents who've had in the Nation of Islam who've given birth to children who they believe in the teachings, but they may have not come active, right, at this point in their life, right? So, what advice would you give to parents who are members of the Nation of Islam who have Muslim children who have not accepted the faith themselves as you came to do?
Yes, sir. And so I know that, that equation is very difficult in the world right now with all of the temptation that is out there for young people. All of the pull of the world, it makes it difficult for a lot of young people, even growing up in Islam, to make up their mind to fall in, because sometimes the world looks like so much fun compared to, the mosque and trying to be righteous. But I think that all parents who will hope to be successful in keeping their young people, as all parents would, want their children to follow them in the way of righteousness. I think that one of the keys that my mother always used with me was that she never forced me to come to the mosque. She did not necessarily make me do it, but she was always gently, lovingly offering me the way. My siblings, who my older sister in particular, who came in before I did, as there's five of us, but she was the first one of us to find her way back to the mosque. She was always gently, lovingly offering me the word, offering me, to talk to me about Islam. And she and my mother and those that are in my family that had come back before me, they always spoke to me like a believer. And I think that was very effective. Even though I was doing what I was doing, the child that's born in Islam is in your DNA to respond to the word. It was all filling up the egg and the sperm that made us. So when they would talk to me like that, even though that maybe didn't register right then and there, it was hitting, it was sinking in, and it was only a matter of time before it manifested. So I think we have to approach our children in that way, and talk to them like you're a believer, because you are. It's all up in them, even if they're not showing it yet, and have that kind of patience and love to keep gently offering them the way that they can see, because this world is going to do its job to make them to know that that's not the way. But if we are there showing them the love, the compassion, the open arms, it's only a matter of time before it starts to make sense for them. Hopefully they don't have to go that way to find out, but if they do go that way, they'll see, what mom and dad are talking about. That's the right way. They'll see it, they'll feel it, because it's all in their makeup. And when I would hear the word as a young person, I often say it was not like I was learning something new. It was like I was being reminded of something I forgot.
Mm. Oh, so like our brother's camera.
That I didn't lose the connection.
Yeah,
Okay,
there we
but
go. We back. We back.
yes, sir. So, I always say it was like learning something that I forgot. It was like somebody was giving something back to me that I lost, and I recognized it, even if I
Mm,
wasn't living the life yet on a cellular level. I recognized that it was right, and I wanted more, even though I might have been going in the other direction. So, long story short, I would tell all of the parents, talk to your children like you know who they are,
Mm,
and plant that seed, and water it, and trust that Allah's gonna bring them. But
mm,
we can't get frustrated with them. And I know that for me, even with some of my siblings and other people I've tried to teach, I asked the minister once, I was asking him, I was frustrated with, trying to help a particular person and taking too long to come along. I'm complaining, minister ain't, and I listen, and he said, some people will never be what you want them to be when you want them to be.
mm,
Never.
mm.
So
Wow.
for me, I mean, that was a healing balm. Like, don't try to make it happen on your time. It's gonna happen on his time. And it's not gonna be when you think it should be, but you have to keep watering it. And I can say that guidance has worked for me 100%. And had I not heard that, I probably would have lost patience with a few people.
Wow.
but with that, we give people a chance, and we give our children a chance. So
Praise be
thank
to
you.
that. Like they say on TikTok, you just dropped a bar when you repeated that. That's a bar right there. I had to write that down. We had to let that be one of the clips. But what I love about your response to that question is, in it, those who are in that situation, believers who are in that situation, can begin to start learning some things to do. Like you say, your family always spoke to you like you were a believer. And this is why it's so important for us to tell our stories. Like in the lessons in the problem book, it speaks about uh Musa having 59,999 books. And if we've studied the teaching, we know that number is related to what Yaqub did when he began to start doing his work. And when I
Mm,
read that, I said, man, I wonder if Allah is trying to let us know that people are also books. So
mm,
if we spend the time talking to people and hearing their story, we can learn. So I pray that those who watch this can hear that, and who find themselves in that situation can speak to their children like your family did, in the manner of your sister, how she handled you. So that's good. And while researching for this, I came up on something else, my brother, that I didn't know. So let me bring this to the screen. So I came across some interesting information about our brother, that you were a skilled high school and basketball player, where in junior college, some of your accomplishments were the following. We got the receipts, so he ain't making this up. He was the two-time region player of the year at SSC. He averaged 14.5 points, 6.6 rebounds per game in 2011 and 12. And he knocked down, listen, hear this, 187 three-pointers in 2 seasons. Man, that's 2 seasons. 100, and you divide that by two, that's, do my math, 2 times, like 90 something almost each year. My math is right. And from what I understand, you walked away from that pursuit, right?
yes, sir.
So tell us about what made you do so.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, when I was coming through that role in basketball, to achieve what I did achieve in high school and junior college, then playing on the Division 1 level on national TV, and traveling all over the country, and playing on that high level. That picture right there was a game-winning shot at the Horizon League semifinals, just before going to the tournament over UIC. To get to that level, I had to make that pursuit my entire life. I was the brother who was in the gym 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I didn't have a life in high school. I didn't even in college. The guys want to go hang out. I'm going to the gym. That kind of, what the youth might call Mamba mentality.
Mamba
I
mentality.
was on that, growing up. And in order to be like that, I had to have a blinders on, and where that was my world: eat, sleep, drink, basketball. And in conjunction with what I was saying earlier, as I went down to Chicago to play, and then end up going to Green Bay. As I was going along that journey, really the difficulties that I was facing, the trials of life, it forced me to reach more for the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, just to keep my state of mind proper to be able to play basketball. But the more I did that, the more I began to see how how small it is to have your entire life dedicated to a game. And
Mm,
it wasn't that I stopped liking playing basketball, but I said, I don't believe that Allah created me
mm,
to have my life revolve around putting a ball in a basket. And it just became something that I said I can still play. I can still use the game as a tool, but at a certain point I didn't feel right within my spirit continuing to dedicate my entire life to sport and play.
mm,
And there was a tough decision for me to make. It was my junior year, after kind of getting to the height of my basketball career. Really, as a junior, I was starting Division 1, playing on national TV. Some of the things people, dream about. But it was, something within my heart. I said, if I don't get focused on what I believe I'm here for, at a certain point, this will start making me other than myself. It will start making me something that I won't be pleased with. So I
mm,
had to make that tough decision, because, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told the minister, music is a God and it'll make you bow. I could say the same of sports and sport and play. It'll make you bow, and for me, I didn't feel right staying that course, knowing what I know and what I need to do to share. So I came home to help brother student minister Robert here in Grand Rapids, and the rest was history.
praise be to Allah. Now, I can imagine, when people are excelling on the court, their family and friends and others that begin to start having certain expectations and wanting you to win because they see how they can benefit, right? So I can imagine that when you made that decision, you had to deal with their disappointments, and you probably also had to battle your own fear or own doubt of making that decision and the questioning of your family and friends. So how were you able to work through all of that, all of those emotions and thinking patterns and say, listen, this is what I'm gonna do? Because the stats show you were balling, brother.
Yes, sir, most definitely. And yeah, a lot of people did have high expectations, just like you said. They were looking for me to go to the NBA or at least play overseas, with what they knew of my ability, and how Allah was blessing me to have these opportunities. But when I made up my mind on what I was going to do, I took all of that into calculation, because that, of course, was something I wasn't quick to do. It took a lot of prayer and a lot of, soul searching before I finally made that move. And then, of course, when you make that move, you begin to see the people that are really in your life for you versus those who are just kind of grabbing your coattail because they see you rising to the top, and maybe I can walk with him, when he walks into fame and fortune. But I was surprised and somewhat not surprised to find that when I took that step, that a lot of people that I thought were friends, to begin kind of fading away, and people who you think are in your corner, or, they begin to fade away, and maybe even those who stay around, but they question, why didn't you stay doing that? You had money, you had everything you needed. Why would you come back to be a Muslim or to sell a newspaper? It's like the minister said when he was out on the corner, and a woman that was in his community, he said she popped him and said, "You, this what you come to, a paper boy? You stopped singing and dancing." I had people kind of say a similar thing to me. I said, "Man, you're not playing basketball no more. We got to get you back out there." They think that you're going down by making the decision to try to go in the path of God. But what they didn't realize is that I was going up. And so I had to keep that in mind, that, no matter what friends fall away, no matter what expectations die in the minds of others, and they might be disappointed in me, I was settled on what I felt was in my heart to do and what I could feel good about doing. And so it was difficult. I'm not going to say I was just a man of steel all the time. And I can't say I didn't think about going back to play, but it was almost like even when I did try, it was almost like how the minister said Allah took his voice when he tried to go back to the studio. I tried to go back a couple of times and had no game, and
Mm.
so it killed any idea of going back, and it helped me to refocus and say, no, you said you were going to come home and help in the cause of Allah. And so I fortified myself. I clung to my prayer rug, and by Allah's grace, I was able to hold through that difficult transition in life. It definitely is a something that can bring about loneliness. When you take a step like that, it can bring about a sense of just kind of feeling lost. But if you hold fast to Allah, you can pull it through. I bear witness to that.
And then when you make such decisions like that, then trials begin to start coming up, and you can have people see, look at you left there and look at all of this stuff. But you know what's so interesting, listening to your story, thinking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as gifted as he was in that field, and as gifted as you were in that field, isn't it amazing that to find out, yeah, we were gifted in those areas, but our greatest gift is in this.
Mm,
And I think about all the brothers and sisters we see in this in the entertainment, sports, and they're gifted. But how many of them can also, whether like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to Young Mr. Louis Farrakhan, your greatest gift is in the spirit. I think he said the spiritual teaching, right?
yes, sir,
That's
in the
that's
spiritual.
amazing, man. So you mentioned our brother and our brother who you came back to help, brother Robert Muhammad. May Allah be pleased with him. And it was interesting. Prior to this interview, I just happened to be looking through my phone. I don't know why, and I came across his number saved in my
Mm,
phone, in my
mm.
contacts. And now we're here today doing this interview. So, can you share with us, just with the audience, just some of your memories that you've had with our brother and his impact on you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, indeed. My brother Robert Dion Muhammad, he was the first brother that I got a chance to watch up close, and really serve with, of a student minister. And the mark of my brother, was that he was a very compassionate brother, very kind brother. A brother that you'd never see him yelling at anyone. You wouldn't hardly see him upset with anyone. He was a brother that, I think his kindness, his merciful way, you know, was something that I, as a younger man, I used to say, man, I want to see my brother, get mad, get hot. But he was so cool in his temperament. He was so peaceful, but powerfully studied, strong in the way of Allah. And I admired him, for these combination of qualities. And, I saw him working hard, and the few believers that were with him working hard in the then study group. And, every time I came home from school, from playing basketball, I was always eager to come and help him because I saw him working hard for the man that I loved. But at a certain point, of course, when I came home and to be with him and walk with him nearly every day for the last year that he was with us, just out in the field going after guests and everything, he was a brother that I can say was absolutely committed to the labor of Islam. He wanted to see the teachings spread amongst our people. He wanted to bring about a mosque, which Allah has blessed us to do at this point, as of 2023. But I would say that, his kindness in dealing with me, he was another one that spoke to me as a believer. When I came
Mm,
around, he didn't talk to me like, you out there. He spoke to me like he knew I was a believer and it was only a matter of time. He's the one who said, "Come on, let's get into orientation class, and young brother, you're gonna have to cut off that chin patch," because I had just got my little chin hair and I was lining it up and I thought I was cool, but Brother Robert said, "Hey, it's time to come on and fall in." He did my processing class. He's the first brother to put me up on the roster, man. I asked, brother, can you give us an opening on Sunday? And so, you know, his his brotherhood, his mentorship, his friendship is something I always hold with me. And as they say, you only know a man by walking in his shoes. And I could say walking in our brother's shoes and now guiding the flock here by Allah's grace after our brother, that I've come to know and appreciate and love him probably more in his absence even than I did in his presence, because
Mm,
it's just that way. When someone that you love is not there, there's always a greater appreciation, because all you have to hold on to is their word, the good things you remember about them. And my brother and I shared a lot of good moments together in the field, and working and soldiering together. And I will always honor my brother and carry him in my heart. And, by Allah's grace, we have his wife, his children that are all in the mosque now to show that, he was indeed a Muslim at home and abroad. And all of them are following in his footsteps, carrying on that legacy. And so I'm happy I still get to see my brother and his wife and in his children. But I think that his level of commitment has everything to do with why Allah has blessed us to become a mosque now here in Grand Rapids.
praise be to Allah. And so, did you end up becoming the student minister? I know it's a mosque now, or the student coordinator shortly after? Can you explain how you came into this position?
Yes, sir. So after our brother transitioned in 2014, uh, I was his assistant, not necessarily officially, but I was by his side. So I was already helping to run the Friday night circles. I was helping to run the mosque, and so I continued on as usual to help continue open up the mosque, run the meetings or the study group at that time. But I was not named the student minister. I was uh, helping to run the operation. But it was our brother from Benton Harbor, brother Marcus Muhammad, the mayor there, who was instructed by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Executive Council to come up to Grand Rapids to help keep us standing. As you can imagine, the study group was reeling after the loss of our brother, and it was a very difficult time. But brother Marcus Muhammad, he came up, and for 3 years and 6 or 7 months, he came up the highway almost every Sunday to teach the word and to give me guidance and support as I was handling the mosque affairs through the week. So it was not until 2016, nearly 2 years after Brother Robert transitioned, that the minister gave me the title of minister. But even then, he did not name me the minister over the study group until 2018. So I served for that period of time with our brother Marcus Muhammad, who was like an emergency manager and came in to keep us standing and to offer us some structure and to give me the benefit of his friendship, of his guidance, and in 2018, the minister then appointed me over the then study group, and of course, in 2023, we were blessed to become a mosque. So I've been on the post since 2016, but the minister made the decision to allow me to serve the body here directly in 2018 uh, and until today.
Praise be to Allah. And we think it's a beautiful thing to see that the relationship that you had with our brother and what he was working toward, um, and that keeping that same motion, keeping that same stride, that now in the city of Grand Rapids, that now what our brother worked for is actually in existence as well, and it is a mosque, right? So thank you for
That's right.
that, and We give salute to his family and all of the believers that are there. My next question I want to ask is, being in these positions, as you know, um, it comes a lot. It comes with a lot, right? And since you've been working in this capacity, what do you, as a student minister, what would you say has been some of the lessons that you have learned?
Mm. Yes, sir. Well, I can say it's been many, many, many lessons all the time doing this work, trying to help in the work of a man that we are taught that God said to him that he has been given the hardest job of any man that has ever lived. And then, of course, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and lifting up that work. We who serve in this way are trying to help in the hardest job of any man that has ever lived. And so, as I've labored in this, and not as long as you, as long as others. So I never say I have all the lessons, but it's a fast track of learning when you're trying to serve our people. And I think that one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is that, our efforts in the way of Allah, if they are not blessed by Him to be successful, then they won't bear fruit, they won't be successful. And so it has developed in me in such a difficult task, it's developed a great, I think, healthy and clear dependence on Allah because, as the minister said to me once, you have a blacksmith who has a piece of metal or whatever their material is that they work with, they can heat it up and they can put it in the shape that they want it to be in, and they have their product. But you have those who are trying to minister for God and trying to serve his people to help make our people better than they are. He said, you're trying to tell them to be a good Muslim. You're trying to tell them to be righteous in a world like this, and you really don't have any power to make that happen. So you have to learn to depend on Allah and to have patience with His hand and working with His people, and you just try your best to serve. You try your best to make the most efforts that you can to be successful, but you have to constantly remember that success is with Allah. And so I don't have the power to make things happen. I have only the power to try to stand up on his word and have faith that it's going to come out in the manner that pleases him and that will please us. So it's taught me a great deal of patience,
Mm,
a great deal. I mean, I wouldn't say it's taught me, it's forced on me a great deal of patience, and I've grown to accept it. It's forced on me a great deal of learning to depend on Allah and not to get frustrated with the seeming delay of a reward for your service. I think that such lessons that is these are things that all of us have to come to learn, and whatever we do, that the success of what you do is with Allah. You do your best, but if He don't bless it, it's not going to happen. To develop patience with whatever you're doing, knowing that it's going to come on His time, and to be able to I'll close this answer with to be able to keep smiling through all of that. I think is one of the greatest lessons I've had to learn in this work because, as you know, in this post, people looking at you, and if you're not happy, you can't really expect the people to be happy.
yeah.
If you're not bright, you can't expect the people to be bright, and it can't be a fake brightness. It can't be a forced smile. So I've had to learn how to draw on Allah to keep me propped up, to keep me cheerful, to keep me in the right attitude. And I think these are lessons that we all have to learn eventually because there's always somebody looking at us, and we who represent the salvation of our people, we should look like we're happy in the way of Allah, and that way we draw people. We're magnetic, like the minister is, and I think this work has. These are things that this work has forced on me, but I take it gladly, and I'm happy that I've been in this work to have these lessons put on me as a younger man, and not have to wait till older years.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. And you're right. Those are the lessons that we end up learning, and some of the many in this mission, which is, the Most High Elijah Muhammad told that he was given the hardest mission of any man that ever lived. And people be, sometimes I've heard student ministers mention it like, yo, and believers, like, y'all do know we've accepted that mission. So we are picking up some of this hardest mission as well too. So we need to understand that and be able to learn how to handle what comes with that, right? And since we are
Yes, sir.
talking about the mission, I've never had the chance to meet your father. I've seen him on several videos, especially with YouTube. More and more is coming out, right? But I know he served as a minister in the ministry class. How does it feel when you see this picture? He's holding you and you're holding one of your sons. How does it feel to know that you are also in the same labor that your father served in?
Mm. Yes, sir. Well, it's something that hits my mind from time to time. And and when it does, it sends me into deep thought and reflection, and how just the majesty of Allah. I'm certainly grateful to be able to carry forward the work that my father uh, has done, to be able to look at myself on that rostrum in Mosque Mariam, and I can pull up a tape where he's at that same rostrum maybe 30 years earlier, and it's something that I think I'm still growing into the appreciation of. I was not as a young boy growing up with the thought of ever being a minister of nothing. I was trying to play basketball, I was trying to drum, I was trying to party, whatever. I was trying to live my life. I was never thinking about teaching Islam or anything. I was on a completely different track. But neither did I know even that my father was a minister until my teenage years. I knew he was a Muslim. I knew that he had some relationship with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as I saw pictures of them together, but I never was fully clear on that picture until my teenage years. And I never got a chance to see him teach with these eyes myself. I've seen tapes like you. Of course, I might have saw him teach as a little boy in Los Angeles when he was the minister over Mosque number 27 in the Western region. But I did not grow up with Minister Ave Muhammad. I grew up, with Dad until, of course, he transitioned. And but in hindsight now, as I look back on his notebooks and I see mine, I look at his lectures and I see mine. I say, wow, Allah, he really makes us the expression or the extension of our parents. As certain times my mother would say, you did that just like your father. It just shows how the power of what's in the DNA. Because I didn't grow up seeing that, but now I look and I see, wow, that's something how Allah makes us to continue on through our children.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. That is something, brother. We started off talking about Muslim children just coming back into the ranks, and here you came into the ranks and into this position of leadership and part of a process working with believers to actually go from a study group to an actual mosque. So that's beautiful, man. It's like, we don't know how things will actually end up working out. So and you're still working. And you mentioned, you dropped several jewels about guidance that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has shared with you. And in preparation for this interview, you talked about how there was an experience you had with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that showed you his compassion and his service, right? And you talked
Yes,
about
sir.
how you called him about something, and you say he spent a length amount of time giving you guidance. Would you be so kind to share with the viewers what that was? And you do know you don't have to spare any details.
Yes, sir. I was and thank you, brother, for the question. I was one day, by Allah's grace, blessed to call the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as he was helping me to navigate a very a serious situation that involved my family. And, it was one of those situations, and I've never been one to just call the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I think that might actually be the only time, one of the only times that I ever called, because it was of a nature that I said, I don't think I want to try to handle this without letting my leader know, and to see if there's anything that he would be able to offer. But of course, in calling the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is over an entire nation, who has all of these ministers and captains and family members and children and a wife and all of the responsibilities that he has, I never think that I'm going to be able to get through. But I called and with the hopes that perhaps I might be able to get through. And by Allah's grace, he answered the phone, and he, with all of those responsibilities, he sat on that phone and listened to me lay out all of the details of this issue that we were having that day. And it wasn't a simple piece. It was complicated. It involved danger. I mean, it was a serious situation. And as he sat and listened, if you've ever had a chance, and those who have been in the presence of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, when you share things with him, he's not cutting you off. He's not. You can tell he's listening intently to every single word, and he listened and he gave me guidance on that which I was dealing with, a part of which I shared at Mas Mariam, in what I was seeking to address with his help. I told him when he asked me, after I laid out everything to him, he said to me, he said, well, how do you intend to handle this? And as I said at Mas Mariam, I'm thinking, well, this is why I called you, dear minister. But he wants to know what I have to say. So I said, well, minister, I intend on going in peace. And he said, yes, we come in peace, but we don't come weak. He said, because if you come weak, you've already lost the battle. He said, we come in peace, but we come in the strength of peace, because peace is maintained by strength. So when he said that, of course, I was floored. I was floored. I'm girding up my loins now to go in peace, but with this strength that he's talking about. And as he was guiding me on how to address the situation, he said to me, he said, I pray that Allah will guide your thought process in every word that you share. And when you're done, call me back and let me know how it went. So of course, yes, sir, dear minister, I do exactly as you said. I got off of the phone with him, and I believe this was a Friday, and this was after going back and forth with him about what we were going to do with this situation, and it was over an hour.
Mm.
And during the time as he's giving me the guidance, and I said to him, I apologize, the minister, for taking up so much of your time. He said, yes, I had a few things to do, but and he was fasting at the time. He was taking on the 3-day fast with the rest of the nation, as many are this weekend. But he said, after he gave me that guidance, he said, call me back and let me know how it goes. So of course I went and I followed what he said to do. Allah blessed us to be successful in handling that situation. I called him back, and I wasn't able to get through. Whoever answered the phone said, the minister's not available right now. We'll leave him a message. And I didn't end up hearing back anything until later that evening. We were running study group over the conference call line because it was during lockdown in 2021. And as I'm running the study group on the conference call, I get a call from the minister. And of course, I had to pass the study group over to somebody else. I get on the other line, and when he answers the phone, he asks how'd it go, and of course I let him know that we were successful, that we were able to get it done, and it went exactly as he said it would go. And he didn't say I told you so or anything. He just said, may Allah continue to comfort you and protect you.
Mm.
And that was the end of it. But it just impacted me so. that here's a man with all these responsibilities, but he took the time out to minister to little me and help me to deal with this situation. And he didn't rush into any of that. And it just brought to mind that scripture that says, let he who's greatest among you be your servant, be your minister. And the minister, I mean, he's a servant through and through. And I have to try to remember that as I'm seeking to serve others, to have that kind of patience, that kind of care and compassion. And even after that event took place, the few times I was blessed to see him, he asked, how are those that were involved, how are they doing? Sharp
Mm,
minded. They don't forget nothing.
beautiful, man. That, and thank you for sharing that that testimony. And you mentioned the word service, and that's a good segue into our next question because one of the things I love about social media personally, it gives me the opportunity to stay in contact with family members, stay abreast on what's going on in various cities, what people are doing. And one of the things that I noticed about Muhammad Mosque number 61 is your level of service to the community. It appears that you all are always doing something, right? And one of the questions that I would like to ask is, can you talk about what all you all have done and the impact of your work, and what are some of the things you all have planned going forward as it relates to serving the community?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I think that um, I have to give some um, applause to our sister MGT captain, who is always presenting the labor and staff here with the various ideas for community outreach efforts and community service. Sister Halia Muhammad, and she lifts it up. We come together as a labor and staff, agree on it. We get the brothers going, and before you know it, nearly every month we've had some kind of coat giveaway, food giveaway, essential items giveaway. And these efforts that we do it always with the Final Call newspaper in hand. As you see in that picture, we always do it inviting to the mosque, because, as they say, people don't know, they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And so we try to always present to the community that, yes, we're trying to offer you a word, but we also understand that you have these other needs, that if we can come to address those needs, then maybe we can put love in your heart for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, for your nation. And then when we call you to come to the word, then it's easier to pull that fish after you giving some bait. And so we're very clear that our work in going out in the streets is to feed our people the word. But we come around with some bean soup and muffins and fruit from time to time as well. We go out with, even this month, we have a coat giveaway that will be in 2 weeks to our people who, as it gets colder and we have these coats that we're not wearing or that people have grown out of, we try to put them in good shape and give them out to the community. And in that way, we really are preparing the earth to swallow the flood. We're preparing our people. They know that we're out here trying to do as much good as possible. And if they can't understand us offering them a paper, you understand us offering you some free home supplies, some clothes, a coat. You understand that, and that helps them to know that Muhammad and Farrakhan is not what they say we are. We love you, and we're trying to express that through what we offer. But I think that the great relationship that Allah has blessed our labor and staff to have makes those kind of functions easier. The mosque relations are smooth. We're a budding baby mosque, just 10 months old, but we, by Allah's grace, have a wonderful team of brothers and sisters that understand the bigger purpose of why we need to stay out in the community, trying to offer our people something that they can hold on to.
Beautiful, man, and continue in that line in regards to servicing, because those seeds will bear fruit, and also it helps to put an anchor in the hearts of our community for us. So continue to do that, and shout out to the sister captain and you all as a labor and staff to be able to come together and see the value of doing such. So we're coming up to our last question, and I want to ask, so as we get ready to close, was there anything that you wanted to share that you didn't have the opportunity to share, or just any closing words, man, because this has been a very dynamic interview from my perspective.
Yes, sir. I've enjoyed every minute of it, my brother, and I thank you for doing this work of getting the testimony of all of those who walk this path, because it really is a beautiful thing, and our testimony is life giving. Everybody's testimony on this road. But I would just say that in closing, to those of us who are striving to walk this road, in this most critical hour, that we, really fortify our minds and make up our minds to follow behind the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, with resolution, with a made up mind. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, there's nothing more powerful in the universe than a mind that is made up. And most times when people see me doing what I do in a position of leadership, they will, they want to know how old I am. I'm not as young as they might think. I'm 31 years old, but you know, they see a lot of believers, how they want other younger believers to be. But I just would say to all of those who are younger, and that's all of us who really embody the spirit of the minister, is that we, really have to make up our mind, that in this time, all of these things that are going on, that we keep our eyes on the man of God in our midst, and we don't wait anymore till tomorrow to make up our mind, and we stop putting things off and recognize that we got the right man, the right word at the right time. And all we have to do is walk behind him with resolution, and we will be successful. I think that sometimes younger persons are a bit too timid, and maybe some of us that are older a bit too tired. But if we make up our mind, energy and zeal will be with us to do what needs to be done in this hour. And we'll have a testimony that can give life to others as we walk this road.
Mm, beautiful, man, beautiful. And thank you, brother, for what you shared and the jewels you've dropped and the history that you've given us. And we pray that Allah continues to bless you, your family, and the believers there. And inshallah, we'll be seeing each other soon in Savior's Day in Grand, not in Detroit, Michigan. But how far is Grand Rapids from Detroit?
We 2 hours away, so we'll be driving up.
Man, I'm telling you that cold weather, brother. I don't envy you all about that cold weather, brother. So, but thank you, man, and give the believers there the greetings, and may Allah continue to bless you.
Thank you, my brother. May Allah continue to bless you as well, and all the believers down there in New Orleans. Look forward to
Yes,
seeing you soon, my brother. Thank you for this opportunity.
yes, sir. All praises due to Allah. Thank you.